Hi everyone, welcome to the 2014 MEMS Executive Congress. Guess where we're at? We're in Scottsdale, Arizona. And I'm Angie Kellen, and joining me is Professor Christopher Wasden of the University of Utah. How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Sure.
Well, let's first start off about the area of focus that the University of Utah is working on.
At the University of Utah, we focus a lot on fitness, health, wellness. We have a medical school, obviously, and so we're looking at how we can use sensors and devices to help us improve health. And so we look at applications such as activity monitors, we look at activity in the medical and the clinical environment, and how we can use this to help patients rehab more quickly. We also have some very interesting technologies that we're developing to enable very passive, frictionless monitoring of people. So we can actually monitor different sorts of activities without them actually wearing any sort of device at all. We can have devices within the room that are measuring them.
Terrific. Well, we look forward to that future coming to pass. One other thing I'd like to ask you is about your presentation today. I've heard a lot of very good things about it. And I know you talked about the paradigm shift of the Internet of Things and how it's impacting the MEMS sensor industry. What are some of the key points that you want the audience to take away?
Yeah, I think the key point is that for us to go to 1 trillion sensors, which is very achievable, I think I looked at my own analysis I shared with the audience, that suggests that we're using about 350 sensors per person per year, and the price of a sensor in that world would be around 2/100ths of a cent, which seems crazy to people today, but that generates a $60 billion MEMS industry. So it really creates the future we all want, but it forces us to really rethink our business models. How do we make money in a world in which sensors are much less than 1/10 of a cent, right? And what sort of applications do we use them in? And really, how do we think about the value of the data that we generate? Because the value of the data is going to be more valuable than the sensor itself.
Gotcha. Interesting. Well, and I know other people have other presentations have brought, other perspectives out there, and the whole ecosystem is what the MEMS Executive Congress is all about. So,
and from an ecosystem perspective, an important point that I brought out in my presentation is this concept of platforms. And how do we create platforms that enable standardization, that enable us to eliminate the 50% of costs in the MEMS industry that is associated with packaging and testing, which seems like an incredible waste in the industry. And how do we actually create platforms that enable new use cases to be developed more quickly, so our innovation cycle isn't one innovation cycle every 15 years, but 3 innovation cycles every year. And how do we also use platforms that create new commercial platforms? Think of the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store, where those commercial platforms enabled hundreds of thousands of new apps to come to market. How could we create new commercial platforms in the MEMS industry that could enable hundreds of thousands of new applications of technology to occur in this industry?
Well, I wish I would have sat in on the presentation, and it sounds like it kept up to the acclaim that everyone has been placing on it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Now, in your opinion, what kind of value can the MEMS Executive Congress and maybe events similar to this bring to the academic audience?
When you look at innovation, there are 3 processes that drive innovation: interaction, variation, and selection. What these conferences do is they bring people together so they can interact with one another. They bring a lot of different variety of people. So when these ideas come together, we call it ideas having sex. So when the various people with different ideas come together, a new idea is merged, or is born, if you will. That's the child that comes from this interaction of people. And then what happens is we select those best ideas. And so I think these become good platforms for communication, ideation, invention, and innovation, so that we can bring lots of variety together to come up with new ideas. I was shocked in the last session we just did. I was on a panel in that one. We asked people to raise their hands and to tell us who was involved in healthcare or wellness related activities. I'll bet 75% of the people in that room rose their hand. So, healthcare is clearly a high priority for everybody, but yet all of them, before they come to these conferences, seem to kind of work in silos. So bringing them together, having them collaborate, realizing they're working on similar problems, really helps drive the innovation forward.
Terrific. Well, one other question for you before I let you get back to all the collaborating and, the chatting. One more thing. What, in your opinion, is the value that you are seeing, or maybe it's changed the perspective of how you see the MEMS industry from this event? Has it supported your perspective? Has it changed your perspective?
Yeah, so I think from my perspective, I've approached MEMS prior to this event as a technology somebody out there is developing that eventually gets into devices that I'm testing and I'm using for different clinical applications or health and fitness applications or things like that. But it was always 2 or 3 steps removed. And so I looked at it more from a macro perspective, and I understood where things needed to go. What I found valuable about this is it got my hands a bit dirty with some of the real problems the MEMS industry has, which are actually large problems that they have to overcome to achieve the 1 trillion sensor vision that we have. And so I'm much more humbled, if you will, with regards to those challenges and what needs to happen. But I'm also more impressed with regards to how different parts of the MEMS industry are trying to self-organize to address and attack those problems and try to overcome them.
Well, very good. Well, I'm going to let you get back to all of the collaborating and the conference itself. I want to thank you so much for sharing your perspective and your feedback as well, and your presentation. And we hope to see you next year.
Thank you. Look forward to it.
Thank you. In Scottsdale, Arizona, Angie Kellen for the MEMS Industry Group.